Hello, Katelyn. How are you?
Hey, Sean. Good. How are you?
Yes, thank you so much for joining this next breakthrough.
Thank you for having me.
So, Katelyn Bullock, she is co-founder of Enta Solutions based in Calgary.
Yeah, yeah, you
Across
got
the world from me in Australia here, but we've met in Los Angeles.
That's right. Yes. At
And
the
very excited to have you on today. We're going to be talking a little bit about AI and transformation
yeah,
and culture is a very important thing when it comes to
yeah.
companies adapting. So let's start off with a little bit of an intro, let everyone understand who you are, and we'll go from there. So tell us about Enta. What does Enta mean?
What does it mean? It's funny enough, we didn't have a meaning for it when we created the word Enta, so it was just kind of our own creation, and we liked the E letter because of the sigma symbol. Looks like an E, right? And what we do is help companies have the whole be greater than the sum of the parts. Right?
Well,
When the team is working seamlessly, when they're all integrated and they're having the hard conversations and they've got a strong culture, it's greater than the sum of the parts, right? You do amazing things. And so that's what we really wanted to create, and that's where Enta came from. And that was our original logo. It has since transformed since then, but that was the original inspiration for it.
but I've read somewhere where it says you're an ideas gardener. There's a wonderful thing on your website. If anybody has a chance, go to your website at solutions.org. It's the Enta movie. It's a short movie. That's
That's right.
minutes. It's
You
it's
saw
a good
that?
one.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm the ideas gardener. So we had we liked to break the box of what business should be and make it what we wanted it to be. And one of the first things we wanted to break is hierarchical structure, right? We wanted people to own their strengths. And so we said, like, we don't need your typical job titles. We don't need CEO, CFO, but we're going to own our strengths, right? And so we
Mm.
really did. So we do this naming workshop with all our employees who come on, and we talk about what their passions are and what their strengths are, and we marry them together. So a passion of mine is gardening, and a strength of mine is business strategy and innovation. And so this is where Ideas Gardener came from. And I'm always like, oh, what if we did this? And what if we did this? Sometimes to my team's dismay, but they know that I'm the Ideas Gardener. So that's kind of where
I
it came from.
see.
Yeah.
So carrying that, that metaphor forward, that you're actually planting seeds in companies with people, right? So when you're hiring, you're doing a bit of nurturing and growing
Yes.
people. It's not necessarily you're hiring for someone who does the job perfectly today, but it might be someone who you can grow into whatever they want to become.
Yeah.
I think, like I've noticed on my team as well, like if you have individuals that have the passion, the right attitude, and are open to things and they're innovative, they may not be able to do the job perfectly now, but they can grow into the best version of themselves versus you trying
Right.
to fit this narrow, kind of pre-described hole, that you want somebody to do.
Yeah, it's much easier to grow skill set than it is to try to realign somebody's values, if
So
that
when you
makes
talk
sense.
about values, that's obviously an important thing. And you see companies have mission statements and they have values. And sometimes if you go around and you ask the employees, they won't even remember what the core values are, frankly, unless it's really lived internally.
Yes.
I had spent time as a head of learning and development, and one of the things that was stressed was the core values of the company and having to imbibe that. We had something we called a Sun card. This was a hospitality company, and every host would carry around a little card that
Yeah.
basically had the values, it had the mission statement, and they would look at it almost to ground themselves sometimes to remind themselves of what they actually were there for, which was the guest experience, which is to elevate the guest. And I think it was very different when I first came across that. I thought it's like, is this a cult? What is this? You're carrying around the card all the time? But actually, you're we didn't even call it an orientation. We called it an induction
Yeah.
when we actually put people in, because you were hiring people with the attitude of guest service. You were hiring people that were open to, a different way of doing things and bringing their best selves to work.
Well, absolutely. And I think, I mean, cult is in the word culture, uh,
That's true. Yeah.
right? And it is a little bit of that. It is a little bit of like you're fanatically finding these people who align with their values and are going to live by them because that's your brand reputation. right? And so I always find it really interesting. What you see is what you get. When a good culture is lived and their brand showcases that, then what you see from the outside is what you get on the inside. Nobody likes a rug pull, right? Or you like apply for a job, you're super excited. Oh, it's a fancy brand, and you get in there and you're like, oh my gosh, this is toxic, right? It is
Yeah.
not at all what they appear to be, right? And nothing is worse as an employee, as an employer, to like have to do this like turnover, right? And that's where we lose money in companies. Like selling culture to the C-suite is hard, right? It's not like I've installed a new AI system and you're like reaping the improvements tomorrow. It is an ongoing process that you start to reap the benefits for 6 months, maybe a year, maybe, but 3 years of constant effort, then you're going to start to see those profitability increases through retention, through productivity increase, that kind of stuff. So it's a long
Uh,
game.
it's the authenticity, right? People wanna make sure that they're aligned their values with a place that they can believe in and that believes
Yeah.
in them. And then I
Yeah.
think, like you said, the sum is greater than the parts. We've heard that, that, yeah, bad culture can really kill a company. What's the sign that a company is in trouble with their culture?
Usually they have lots of turnover is a really good sign. You can always check your reviews on like Indeed and Glassdoor and those places because they people do not hold back on those reviews. And so it's really interesting to hear what they people who have left say about the company and people who are in the company what they're willing to post because you can guarantee that's like the most outspoken. There's probably a slew of people who've never posted on there, so you can probably extrapolate from there. But really, it is a lot of turnover. If you're struggling with turnover, if you're struggling with low productivity, right? Or even just low innovation if it feels stagnant. But I mean, Sean, I'm sure you felt it. You walk into a business, and I know this is harder with hybrid, but you walk into a business, you can feel the culture. You
Yeah.
can either feel that it's very disengaged or you can feel an energy in there. And so there's going to be those signs on the numbers, right? On your profit margins on that, like losing that money through turnover, you're going to see those signs in the metrics that we measure. But the second you walk in the doors, you can feel it.
Mm. Yeah. There is an energy when you're whether you're an employee internally or you're a customer coming into the environment where that brand is strong and it
Yeah.
represents who people truly are, there is something magical about that. And I think that's
Yeah,
not just for business, but it could be for nonprofits. It could be for any organization where there's people involved. And you
absolutely.
talk about a whole business philosophy where mind, body, and soul, there's a bit of an analogy there.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through what each of those components represent? Like, how does a business leader like yourself begin applying this to your own company?
So, yeah, we have this belief in the self-actualization of a whole person. It's like this finding the harmony wherever that may be for your mind, body, and soul, right? And if you extrapolated that to a business, right? Your mind is the processes, your body is the tool, and the soul is the culture. And so you can't do anything in your business without impacting one of those quadrants. It's kind of like if you nerd out with me for a second here, Sean, because I'm an engineer, it's a Venn diagram. Okay.
That's
And they all overlap.
you use Venn diagram, 2 circles, the intersection of the yeah.
Yeah. And so the intersection in the middle where all three align, that's the sweet spot. That's your business actualization. That is where you're maximizing your profits. People love coming to work. You're retaining employees. And it's like this sweet spot of organization. You throw in any change, whether it's a person, a new person added to your team, it's going to throw it out of whack. You add a new software tool, it's going to throw it out of whack. You add in a new process, it's going to throw it out of whack. And you're constantly massaging it back into its sweet spot. But some companies get way outside of that sweet spot.
Because they get struggled with day-to-day concerns, right?
Yep.
They've gotta make payroll, or they've got to expand into a new region, or some key person in the company has left, and they're dealing with all of these things. So
Hmm.
how do you balance the now versus, that core kind of foundational stuff that is important? How do you do it? Is it up to one leader, or is it up to everybody to kinda take it forward?
Everybody.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it's
so.
everybody. I mean, it's got to start with the belief from leadership. Like if you do not have it at the top, If the belief isn't there at the top, the rest will not follow. You'll have pockets of success, right? But it will not be uniform through the company. But it is everybody's responsibility to be a part of it, right? And I think that that's where it becomes really difficult, right? Because you can't just we like to like hand it to HR and be like, "You're the chief culture officer."
That's right.
Like, "Here, I want you to go influence every single person's behavior in our corporation." Like, that's a
Right.
bit of a daunting,
That's the ask.
ta
Yeah.
task, yeah, so, and with 0 authority, like so I really think this is where we need to look at culture differently. It really has to do with how we set up ourselves to succeed. How do we build that foundation? And it needs to be in everything we say and everything we do. It needs to be in the way we talk to each other. And if it's
Mm,
not, there needs to be the feedback, like right then and there. Like, I heard you say this. I really appreciated how it aligned with our value of this. And you, like, you're constantly calling it out, right? Like, you guys had a card you referred to all the time. It's
yeah.
constant. Am I doing it? This is the litmus test. Does this align, right? It's constantly got to be that way.
I draw a parallel to something like you hear the saying, it's your reputation is something or your brand is something that people talk about when you're not in the room,
Yeah.
when there. And I think culture is similar to where you could say culture is those little moments between people that are in this organization that is not the chief people officer or the chief talent officer commanding, "This is culture, you must follow these 5 values," and then when they walk away, nobody lives it. They don't treat each other the way that is expected. So I think
Yeah.
the guardians of culture, and you'll see that I've seen that title as well, and it's like the brand ambassador or the guardians of
Yeah.
the culture, and their job is to basically make sure that those little moments matter, because all those little experiences that people have, whether it's, just another person helping them, going out of their way to help them, or
Yeah.
it's the way they're servicing a customer that's reflecting on the culture, or it's not something that one person can control.
It's all these small little interactions every single day, they add up. But the second that leadership says something or does something to counteract what the values are, it is like it'll desecrate it overnight. Everything you've built, right? You can just eliminate all that trust. And so I've seen entire corporations like crumble their culture with like one communication
Mm,
that didn't go through that does this follow our values litmus test. And I know it's not always bright and shiny, and there's hard communications we have to have in businesses, and there's layoffs, and there's downsizing, and we are changing as businesses, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, how we're transforming. But you gotta, even the hard times, you put it through the culture filter. Did we act in the way we said we would? Right? And so I think like you can't not have bad times in business. That's just inevitable, but it's always got to align with your values. And so if your value is care, then you've got to do what you have to do as a business, but care has to be apparent in that.
mm. Well, it's the soul of the business, as you said, which is challenging if you're remote, right? A lot of people are working either remotely or across cultures,
Yep.
where things in one culture might be expected or understood, but in another culture it can feel quite different. So how do you balance that, or how does an organization handle that when you have multicultural teams that are remote and they may never even meet each other in person?
This is really interesting because like there's two elements to that. One, there's different ethnic cultures because of the experiences we had in the areas we grew up. And then there's two, the remote work, which may or may not include that, right? So, firstly, with remote work, where culture really went downhill is so much of our culture relied on the unplanned moments that were in office before we went remote, right? I call them the water cooler moments. We happen to meet each other, we say hi, and after 6 months, that hi has turned into I know what your kids are doing, I know your wife's name, and we have built that rapport over these incremental moments of just happening to bump into each other.
Yeah, if you're in Melbourne, it's the coffee, right? Everybody's
Right?
going around and having coffee sometime. That's when you
Yeah.
get things.
And it takes time because at first it's very surface level conversation, but then, after a while, we get a little deeper, a little deeper, a little deeper. Well, with remote teams, you don't have those accidental bump ins. And so, like, we've always been remote. We were remote before it was cool. And we had to artificially manufacture the connection moment. And it was super awkward at first.
So what's the
Is
one tip you tell someone to do if they're a remote business? What's that ritual you did?
So for us, like we're kind of really out there. Like I said, we like to break the mold. We had a mind, body, soul Monday. And so the half an hour, and we very specifically set it aside for this is connection only. I didn't want because it's so easy to get into logistics, right? When you're kicking off your Monday. And I was like, if we truly believe this is the most important thing was connection, this is not going to be a logistics meeting. The first half hour is just connection. And so it started very surface level with the team. It's like, how's your mind, body, and soul? Like, how are you doing? It was a check in. People would tell us about their weekend. It was very surface level. And then it happened where I had a really hard weekend. There was some issues with my daughter's health. And I had come into my meeting and I said, I'm not doing okay. And I'm like, I'm really struggling. I had a hard weekend. And, I'm just really sorry, guys, if I'm not showing up as my best. And two things happened. The first thing that happened was after the meeting, everybody reached out and said, "What can I do? How can I help you?" Okay, so like that right there, like reinforced connection. The second thing that happened is a month later, one of our employees came and he opened up about something he was afraid of that was going on in his life.
Mm.
And there was this deeper connection. And what it did is it reinforced that I got your back and the team connection and the dynamic and the ability to work through hard conversations and understand each other and to be okay to say I'm not okay and for everybody to say what do you need, I got you. So we didn't drop balls that week. I had the support I needed, but it took months to get to that level, and it took me as the leader being super vulnerable to start. And that's hard to do in a business, and we have this like belief that we need to show up very professional way and like separate personal from business, and like we're humans, guys. you know? So, it might not be for every business, that particular model, but if we don't artificially create connection moments, you will never get the strong culture that you might want in your business if you're a culture strategic business.
Mm. No, that's a great tip. I think that ritual I have seen actually when I was at Salesforce, we would have just a call on a Friday. We'd do like trivia games and, it would just be a connection kind of meeting just to get the team together. Sometimes we wouldn't know exactly what the agenda is. We just know there'd be like a quiz online, a fun quiz, not hard
Yeah,
like
yeah.
about work, you know. But it did make those moments where you could have some laughter and go into the weekend and, people might bring a drink to it or whatever. But yeah, it's quite fun.
Right?
Um, I want to turn to this idea, or not this idea, but I want to turn to AI, right? AI, we know, is going to impact the workforce.
Yeah.
You've talked about linking a business's process, the mind, and its culture, the soul. How, as a leader, use AI to not just improve process, but to like actually strengthen and scale the company culture?
There's tools out there right now that are doing some really crazy stuff with culture. I've seen tools starting to do this 10 years ago, scrape data and really target like any culture issues that there might be happening in the business and like looking at the emails and stuff like that. I've seen some really interesting AI tools that support culture. But the biggest thing that's going to happen with tools and AI and culture is businesses are going through a huge transformation. And just like we talked about that operational sweet spot, as soon as you plug in a tool, you're going to bump it out of that operational sweet spot. So you're going to have to address the culture, the people side of things, right? Not only from adopting, but there's going to be a huge shift. You're going to see corporations come up, like a lot of our clients are engineering firms, right, Sean? And they are like global engineering firms with tens of thousands of employees. You're going to see these competitors come up who have built AI from the ground up as a startup into their business that are competing, outbidding the big guys and able to do like the same amount of work with a fraction of the people, like a tenth of the people. And so they're going to undercut but like estimates and scope, and they're going to be able to really it's hard to change a big ship. Those big
Mm.
guys, it's hard to change, right?
There's so
You're
much
moving,
legacy
yeah,
politics.
Yeah, politics,
systems in
legacy.
place.
Yeah, and so what you're going to see is these little guys come up really fast and take a big piece of the pie if the big corporations cannot pivot. The fact of the matter is, in my opinion, they can't pivot fast enough. So if I was the owner of a big corporation, I would create a subsidiary, probably a limited liability one, if I was really smart, because we don't know how and where AI is going at this point. But I would innovate from the outside and I'd actually create my own competition,
Bit of
build
a
it from there.
skunk works. Creative destruction is a term where you look at your
Yes.
own processes and try to figure out if we had to start fresh, what would it look like? Remove
Yep.
all of that legacy kind of thinking
Yep.
and yeah, and see how you move forward.
Right. Because it's going to be big. Like you've seen it already.
I mean, the thing
It's
I think
so
about
far.
is if you're undergoing something traumatic, right? A big change in your life, you will likely go back to your core values of like what you believe, because that is like the foundation of what grounds you. And I think the same thing of an organization. You have big changes coming, workforce skiing, layoffs or the jobs changing or people having to really question like, is our process like, is this what we're doing with AI now available to us? That's very disruptive. It's like a psychological shock to the system,
Big time.
whether it's a person having to deal with it in their own career or it's a person or it's a whole organization. The organization needs something to fall back on. So I
Yep.
always think like, what are they going to fall back on? People are going to fall back to the values of what the company stands for, what the leader is representing in
Yep.
order to navigate this disruption. And it's not like the disruption is going to go away. It's going to accelerate
Yeah.
as AI and, generative starts to, increase in its capabilities. And exactly what you said, companies that are not acting today are gonna be either caught off guard or, the best people are going to leave because they're gonna say, "Well, talent moves where the innovation's happening."
Yeah.
So I think
And it,
how do they maintain that culture, keep the best people, but also instill that mindset of that mindset of innovation where people are always thinking ahead, okay, well, how are we going to move this giant ship
yeah.
if it happens to be an enterprise?
Yeah, and I think we're seeing, and Sean, you've probably seen this in your careers, that the software companies are doing mass layoffs, and that impacts culture. When people you've been working with for, a decade are all of a sudden packaged out and like they're not part of your work team anymore. Not only does the process need to change, that work is going somewhere, right? The tools come in and the process changes, but also the people dynamic change. That could have been the person who you went to vent your weekly frustrations to that kept you engaged because they talked you off the ledge all the time and now they're gone, right? And so like you'll get this ripple effect of like almost a culture reset because every time a person leaves or joins, it changes a little bit. It's very fluid.
Mm. When you talk to certain leaders, some are very forward thinking and they say, well, yeah, it starts with culture. That's what we go back to. And any times of disruption and any challenges we have, we go back to the culture and we figure out what do we stand for and how do we take the company forward in this very difficult decision. With AI, though, if you're starting to lay off lots of people, a lot of people are fearing that this is going to kind of dehumanize the workforce. It's going to be like one boss and a bunch of agents running around or digital employees. From your perspective, how does a strong purpose-driven culture, how can that be the antidote to make sure that AI is used to kind of empower employees and not just completely replace people?
I think there is this I think there's this fear every time there's this new revolution of technology, right? Like, oh, we're not going to need so many people to do the things. But AI is going to introduce a whole nother level of need, right? We replace a tool to do a human task, and all of a sudden there's a new human task that's required because of that tool. And so
Mm.
I think there's going to be like this kind of, it'll level out eventually, right? But I think we're going to see a lot of corporations, Sean, that don't need the hundreds of thousands of people. It's going to be a huge shift in our world. Um, and I think what people can do is become AI savvy, right? If you're the one who knows it, if you're the one who understands how to integrate it. The one thing that's not going away is we are humans and we need connection. because as handy as it is for me to chat to an AI agent and a bot, I can tell you how many times I just want to talk to a human, right?
But
And
they're
so
getting better and better, and some people you
they're
almost see people like, they're like, talking to it like a therapist or, like, dating it, like, you've seen these I would say they're not commonplace scenarios at the moment, but you do see there are certain stories that you hear, probably the sensational ones where you think about the movie Her, you know, and, so there are people out there that are starting to humanize something that we know is not human. It's not sentient. It's not the
yeah,
Terminator. It is something that can mimic a human in a way, and I
yeah,
think it's up to us to have that critical thinking to say, "Well, this is technology. This is what it's capable of," but also realize that in years not even years, it could be months. You see how fast it's accelerating. Oh, where we think about it today, it is something we control. It's a tool we use to the point where the intelligence, I'll say intelligence, as just in quotes, when the abilities or capabilities of the AI exceed what we thought was possible as humans. And I think that's the transition that we have to go through is figure out in a world where technology is able to provide us things we can never do before and we could never even imagine before, how does that
yeah.
impact society? How does that impact culture and how does that impact companies? And if people are not thinking about this, I'm certainly thinking about it. I know you're thinking about it. And
Oh yeah,
how do
big
we
time.
help other people come along the journey when I talk to my mother, she's in her 70s. She's not thinking about AI every day because she's like,
No.
does it matter to me really at the end of the day? But I said, well, it does impact everything because maybe you're going to get a call from, quote, me, asking you for something and it's not really me. So there's a danger out there as well. People have to be aware.
There's a huge danger, and I think you see like guys like Sam who talk about cybersecurity of AI and what and the fears that he has. One of the founders of ChatGPT, and you listen to him, and he has real legit fears of where it could go. And I think we have to appreciate that, and it is evolving way faster than we can come up with the solutions and the protection for it. And our society runs that we don't put policies and protection in place until something bad has happened. It's just how we are. It's how
Yeah.
businesses run. Businesses don't do procedures and policies until they've been burned, right? And so we are going to go through a whole bunch of iterations of getting burned. And hopefully none of those is so detrimental to our society and to our humanity. Is what we can hope for, is that we catch up fast with the policies and the security around it, because there is a huge risk to business, to humanity, and we have to appreciate that. This is uncharted territory, and I mean, your mother might be 70 years old, but I just read a AI paper that they are using AI to read DNA, and they have been able to isolate aging in the DNA and be able to like apply AI models to help actually do regenerative in DNA, and they actually de-aged a monkey in China. Did you see that?
No, not yet.
Okay, so like I was like,
Not yet.
pardon?
So we have immortality coming. So who knows?
Right, like 70 is the new 20.
Yes.
But like we have like the world, like it's it's limitless, the possibilities of how we could use this and what it's going to mean for our future. We don't know. There's so many iterations of what it could be. And so I think we have to prepare to be nimble as business owners. We have to jump on and do this in a way that protects our people too.
Mm. So in this environment where things are going to change so quickly that not like we can't stand here and say we both have the answers of what's going to happen in 5 years. We have absolutely no idea.
True.
But we do know is that humans need to adapt to the change and they need to adapt quickly.
Yep.
So what's the one thing that you would advise or what do you think people should be doing if they're listening to this, watching this? Like how can Enta help them with that? How do you help them navigate this kind of confusion, this chaos, this uncertainty?
Yeah, we help companies that are going through transformations, whether it's they need new efficiencies in processes, whether plugging in new tools, but keeping that foundational. You talked about the foundation and the culture being like that that go-to place. How do you transition? How do you transform your business into this new AI world and keep the core of who you are and your purpose, but help you navigate those hard changes because change is so hard. And organizational change fails 70% of the time, if not more. And
What's the
so,
big reason why it fails? Like, what's the number one reason?
number one reason is because people don't spend enough time understanding people. It's not the logistics of change. It's not the technical aspects of it. People don't spend enough time in the awareness and desire, particularly desire, understanding the pain, the hurt, and the emotional journey it takes to change. Anybody who's gone through a change knows that, like, people fight it. I mean, you're with Salesforce, so you probably had to integrate into a lot of companies' processes. And I see like Oracle and SAP, these big ERP systems go into companies, and the pain it causes, the frustration, and you hear about it at the water cooler moments where they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe we have to do it this way now," and they don't understand like all the other people don't spend enough time understanding the emotional piece. And so we have a workshop called the Change Champion Workshop, and we help people understand the emotional side of change and why people are change resistors. And we help them to navigate those hard conversations to get people to embrace change faster, to get people to embrace change and understand each other where they're coming from. But I honestly believe that's why change fails, is because we don't spend enough time in the emotions. We don't like to live there, especially
Um,
business leaders, right? We have those barriers, but we are emotional creatures. And so if we don't recognize that and appreciate it and spend some time bridging that for people,
mm.
you get a whole bunch of change resistance, and these initiatives fall flat, unfortunately.
So I've been around a lot of software implementation projects,
Yeah.
and you'll see that change comes up. It's the first thing that gets cut from the budget. And because they say, "Buy the tool." Yes, the tool will be this magical pill that's gonna make everything better, but they fail to forget the process. There's the change in the process, and then obviously it's touching people. It's changing roles, and
Yeah.
you can only imagine that, unlike, your SaaS software today where there is change when you implement new tools, with
Yeah.
AI, you're changing roles, you're changing the way the foundational processes can work if you're not
Yeah.
just playing, around the edges.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, it's we often just focus on the tool. It'll solve the problem. It's never that easy, you know that.
Yeah, exactly. So Enta Solutions, what's the best way for anyone who's interested in this idea of culture, change, transformation, AI transformation? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you or have
Yeah.
that conversation? Or maybe they just go watch your movie online?
Go
What's
watch a
the what
movie, they can read our book, they can
perfect.
go to endsolutions.org, contact us form. They can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. I'm there, Katelyn Bullock. You can reach out directly. We're building right now and about to launch a AI transformation course to help businesses to understand what's coming. What are the options out there? How do they leverage some of these tools? What can it do? What can't it do? Because I think there's often that like misnomer in the understanding, like, oh, I can just plug it in, it'll do everything for me. No, it's not going to
There's a
wash your
lot of
socks.
hype out there for sure. That's absolutely.
Yeah, and what's the right way? How much is when? Like, you can't just do this stuff overnight. So how do you make this transition into your business and keep the core? Keep who you are. So we're going to launch that course. People reach out to me and they can get signed up and learn more.
And what type of companies should be reaching out to you? What size of companies? Certain industries? Where's the sweet spot for you guys?
Yeah, we like small to medium-sized businesses. We do work with the corporate giants and happy to do those like global clients. They have a different strategy and happy to apply it for them. But for this course in particular, we're looking at those medium-sized businesses. They're probably $10 million plus revenue. They've got 50 people on, they're complex enough. We like complexity because that's where all of the difficulties happen and the struggles and the hard conversations. And some people like fear that. We love that kind of stuff. So those are the best companies that can contact us. We also love working in particularly construction and oil and gas and engineering. That's our sweet spot. Those are our guys. We really are. I'm an engineer by training. I don't know how I got into people problems, but I love that. And so what we're really good at doing is kind of bridging that A-type technical mind into the people human aspect that needs to happen. And I think there's some difficulties when it comes to, engineering companies and high tech companies to have that sort of dynamic in their leadership. So,
Great. So if that sounds like you, reach out to Caitlin, reach out to her partner Adam. They're there for you to help you navigate this AI transformation. And I really appreciate you joining today,
yes,
helping us
thank you so much,
understand
Sean.
why culture is important, right? And if you're going to go through this massive AI transformation, you have to have something to ground with. And I think culture is a very important part of that. So thank you so much for joining, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.